Barbara, standing erect in the foreground calling to Joan, is well-developed, tall, with broad shoulders. Joan, too, is well-developed, but short and stocky. Jean, 11 years old, shows beautiful development and excellent control of her muscles, and is a lovely-looking creature because, from infancy, Jean has had everything that helps to make a beautiful human being.
We live in a time where equality and open-mindedness and radicalism is sort of celebrated in one way, and yet the undercurrent is still very much about policing women's bodies.
What is it that creates this unfavorable impression the others have of her? There's a mirror, Adrienne. Go on, look at yourself. See if you can discover what it is.
I think society underestimates the danger of presenting unrealistic images, introducing them into the culture and having them in wide proliferation. We as humans are very deeply visual creatures, so even if we're not necessarily conscious of how these images affect us, I do believe that they kind of embed themselves in our subconscious.
When I talk about good appearance or good grooming or looking your best, you probably think immediately of clothes or hairstyle or makeup, just like the icing on the cake. If the icing is very good, well, that's fine. But if the cake itself isn't good, you'd soon lose interest in the icing.
It's some creation of the mind that's influencing a bunch of people to try and tailor their bodies toward something that's been imagined. And it's toxic. I have a lot of friends who've developed severe eating disorders. I think the reason why I hopped over that developmental crisis when I was younger is that my parents wouldn't let me watch TV and they wouldn't let me look at magazines. So I actually wasn't bombarded with all those images that many young girls are bombarded with. I did do dance when I was a kid, but not for very long. And it was also, I don't know what kind of dance the Skidmore dancers do, but the sort of dance that I did when I was younger was actually more akin to cheerleading than dance. And also, I was kind of clumsy, so.
The misconception that a lot of people have is that it's really like, it's about you and your body and your own experience, and every individual experience is very different, and every individual experience is just as valid.
Yeah.
You know?
I like being reassured that there's not a right and wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important thing to remember, because it's like, just, you can't be afraid to do movements that like look weird, or because it's like everyone, first of all, everyone has a different idea of what weird is. And I think it's just like dropping that, being like, okay, like, you know, you can lift up your knee and move it around a little bit. And like,
I definitely think dance can express social and political views. I think just within the choreography that I see, like for example, right now we're performing a piece by Batsheva where we are singing traditional Jewish ritual songs, and in the end we strip down to basically our underwear. And I mean, that's an example of something that's very politically charged, and I don't think it gets much more charged than that.
Have you ever felt pressured to fit into a specific bodily mold? And where do you think that pressure comes from?
Yes. When I was younger, everything that I did was trying to move more into whiteness and less from blackness. Even at school, I saw like people who just were genuinely themselves be ridiculed and reprimanded just for being themselves. And so I felt like, okay, I don't have an option to just be.
Like kind of feeling the rocking of your body and just being conscious of how your body feels. So, if you want to lift up your arm and just drop it and feel, like, how does the weight of that feel versus lifting your arm and like pushing it down? There's no right or wrong way to any of this. So just feeling your body moving, floating. You should feel very relaxed. This is no pressure.
There's something about moving and the moving body and the experience of the moving body that allows your mind to kind of just go free into a separate place in addition to where your body is. I think it's really hard to pick a message to send to girls, younger girls, but I think it's more so a message to our generation and who's going to be the future of these kids, and telling them how can you raise your children, how can you promote a more positive way and a positive environment in which the female body is viewed, so that these children can grow up in a much more warm and natural and accepting environment.
Historians might break it down into three groups of types of activists: liberal feminists, radical feminists, and then the third group was the women's liberation movement. Women's livers, as they called them in the 1970s, right? And so that group is younger than the liberal feminists. That group is less interested in traditional politics. It's more interested in fostering sisterhood, in raising consciousness. By that, what they were interested in was raising consciousness about women's place in society.
So I was very involved in feminist activity even when I was in college. So back in the late 80s, I went to marches in Washington. At the time, the marches were really about equality, gaining equality, pay equity, and access to opportunity. We weren't as targeted politically as we are now.
So here, what they're arguing is that society is full of gender and sex-based discrimination. And so this is the notion of the personal is political, right? What seems like sort of small-scale slights. Somebody walking by a construction site and getting catcalled or whistled at, right? Somebody who was thinking about women's liberation would say, well, no, that's not a small offense. That's actually indicative of the larger problem.
Young women in particular, I think, are up against this struggle that says, I'm supposed to be empowered, I'm supposed to be my own person, I'm supposed to make decisions for myself, I'm supposed to know who I am, and yet the male gaze is so prominent in our culture, and the undercurrent of message is that your body is not enough, it is wrong no matter what. It's either too thin or too fat or too brown or too white or too bodacious or too flat, or any number of things are just constantly policed.
The glass ceiling is breaking. For me personally, older men, I feel like have a resentment towards younger women because we don't keep quiet anymore. We speak our minds. I think there's a fear, and so there can be more violence against women.
I thought that it was going to be more difficult. I definitely didn't master the moves in one class, but what I was worried about was that there were going to be these multi-step movements that I wouldn't be coordinated enough to actually implement in a scenario where I would need to use such movements. But a lot of them were like 2 to 3 step movements. I feel like with repetition, they're really easy to master, which gives me confidence because that means that it doesn't take much to just know enough where you can feel safe.
I tell women, change the subconscious, that you absolutely can defend yourself. You have to believe you can defend yourself. I know I believe 110% that I can defend myself, and I honestly believe that's why I never get approached.
All right, so if you want to take that just like...
I was having a really rough time just with my weight, with my mood, and just not feeling very good about myself. And I thought, I need to make a big change. I was just online one day, and I saw, I Love Kickboxing, and Clifton Park was doing a promo. And I thought, yeah, I'll do it. And I called them, and they said, okay, you're coming in at 6 a.m. It has completely changed my life since then. So the big things for me, mood, community, and just energy level and health in general. I've gained this amazing community of mostly women, a couple of men, but really the community of women is the most important thing to me. My energy level has skyrocketed. I'm more motivated to eat better. And the big thing for me is I suffer from bipolar type 1. And so my mood is kind of unstable as it is. So this has been a huge mood stabilizer for me.
I'm going to show you, it's jab cross, it's really easy. So, but you're fighting, this is fighting guard. So it's your left foot forward. Yep, left foot forward, right foot is kind of like back, kind of like angled out. And then you're always going to keep your hands in your face. A lot of people kind of keep them down here, but you really need to keep them up here. So no matter what you're doing, like if you're throwing a punch, you always bring it back to your face. All right. To kind of protect your face. So this is called jab. So then you have a jab cross. And when you do a cross, you're actually pivoting your right back foot.
It makes you feel so much better about yourself and your ability to kind of assert yourself and defend yourself.
Today I had the lovely Lydia Nightingale show me how to kickbox. I expected to have fun, and I did. I thought, as I think with many things, that it was going to be something that I couldn't do, and I could. What I learned is that things aren't that serious. I can have fun. I like doing stuff like this because it helps me to relax. It helps me to expel a lot of negative energy.
Kickboxing is sort of a relatively new thing. You know, it really started back in the 90s and it's been picking up momentum. You could talk to like somebody at the desk next to you and find out that they do kickboxing. Like it's become this really widespread pastime. And I really think it is reflecting in a lot of women's lives just how, you know, much better it makes them feel about themselves and just how much more empowered it makes them feel.
I definitely do it again. I want to keep doing it. I want to keep learning how to kickbox.
What I'm seeing with younger girls and younger women in today's world and in our generation is that people are very catty and don't stick up for each other and don't support each other and shame each other, and it's happening on the news, it's happening in schools, it's happening everywhere. And I think it's very important to look for what is similar in another person. Don't look for what's different, and really try to support other women because we're all in this together. We want to have everything that everybody else has and be empowered, and the only way we're going to do that is if we stick together.
I just read an article recently that said 20% of Americans have been engaged in a protest in the last 2 years. All of a sudden, we as women could come together after a sexual predator was elected to office and come together and just flood the streets. Being together like that is really important. And I was at the march here in Albany. I have plenty of friends who were in Washington. And the one thing I hear over and over and over again was, you know, I'm in this group of people. I didn't know anyone. You're in this giant mob, and yet we're all there for the same reasons. And people felt this connection, and I think it really solidified things for a lot of women. And I think it's made us unstoppable.